The sleek ships of the Galactic Confederation dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, their hulls gleaming with the combined technologies of a dozen advanced civilizations. Commander Zethvar of the crystalline Vethkai species stood in the observation deck, his translucent form catching the light of the yellow star ahead. This was supposed to be routine, another primitive world to catalog and possibly uplift over the next few millennia. The energy readings from the third planet had been promising, signs of industrial development, radio signals, and even some basic space technology. Nothing unusual for a young species just beginning to reach beyond their home world. The Confederation had done this hundreds of times before. Initial scans. Complete, Commander, reported Science Officer Lumara, her form shifting between states of pure light and vague humanoid shape. As one of the Luminari, she existed primarily as organized energy, making her ideal for analyzing new worlds from a safe distance. The species calls themselves humans, according to their broadcasts. Standard carbon-based life forms, bilateral symmetry, tool users. Everything appears normal. Zethvar nodded, his crystalline structure chiming softly. Estimated technological development level? Late atomic age, early space exploration phase. They have achieved orbit and even reached their natural satellite, primitive by our standards but showing promise. Lumara paused, her light form flickering with confusion. There is one anomaly, however. Explain. Their biological markers are unusual. The genetic diversity patterns suggest an impossibly long evolutionary timeline. Most species we encounter show clear signs of recent rapid development. Genetic bottlenecks, limited diversity, the usual indicators of a young civilization. But these humans, she trailed off, her form brightening with uncertainty. The third member of the first contact team stepped forward. Unit Prime 7749 was a construct of the Nexus Collective, more machine than biological, though the distinction had long ago ceased to matter for its species. Clarification. The genetic analysis indicates evolutionary development spanning several 100,000 standard years. This timeline predates the formation of most known galactic civilizations. Zethvar felt his crystal matrix vibrate with surprise. That cannot be correct. Run the analysis again. Analysis completed 17 times. Results remain consistent. Additional anomaly. Carbon dating of atmospheric pollutants suggests industrial activity began approximately 12,000 local years ago, not the expected 2,000 to 3,000. The commander considered this information. In all their encounters with developing species, the pattern was always the same. Agriculture led to civilization, civilization led to industry, industry led to space travel. The entire process took at most 5,000 to 6,000 years, usually less. These humans seem to have taken twice that long just to move from industry to basic spaceflight. Perhaps they experienced setbacks, Zethvar mused. Wars, natural disasters, technological regression. We have seen it before. Possible, agreed Lumara, but the genetic markers still do not make sense. Their diversity levels are more consistent with a species that has been stable and widespread for far longer than any known civilization. A new voice entered the conversation as the ship's communication system activated. Incoming transmission from the third planet. They appear to have detected our arrival. Zethvar straightened. Most primitive species either fled in terror or attacked when encountering obviously superior technology. A few tried to hide. Very rarely, the most advanced ones attempted communication. Display the transmission. The image that appeared was of a middle-aged human male, sitting calmly behind what appeared to be a basic desk in a simple room. He had dark skin, graying hair, and wore a plain blue uniform with some kind of insignia. Most remarkably, he appeared completely relaxed. Greetings, the human said in a calm, friendly tone. I am Secretary General Chen of the United Nations of Earth. We detected your arrival and wanted to welcome you to our solar system. We have been expecting contact with other civilizations for some time. The three Confederation officers exchanged glances, or in Lumara's case, the equivalent energy fluctuations. Expecting contact? whispered Unit Prime 7749. Most primitive species consider themselves alone in the universe. Secretary General Chen continued speaking. We have prepared translation protocols and have designated several locations suitable for initial meetings. We understand that first contact procedures can be complicated, so we have reviewed historical precedents from our own archives and believe we can make this process smooth for everyone involved. Zethvar felt his crystal structure chime in confusion. Historical precedents? What historical precedents could they possibly have? We know you probably want to conduct standard biological and technological assessments, Chen went on. We have prepared data packages covering our evolution, technological development, and social structures. We have also compiled some questions of our own, particularly regarding galactic history during what we call the Silent Period. Silent Period? Lumara flickered rapidly, her equivalent of nervous laughter. Our archaeological records show evidence of advanced civilizations throughout this region of the galaxy, extending back several million years. But then a gap of approximately 2 million years, where advanced activity seems to have ceased entirely. We are curious whether your historical records might explain this period. The transmission paused as Secretary General Chen seemed to consult something off-screen. Oh, and we should mention, we have already established colonies on 17 worlds and nearby systems. Nothing major, just research outposts and small settlements. We wanted to make sure we disclose this up front to avoid any territorial confusion. Transmission ended, leaving the 3 Confederation officers staring at the blank screen in stunned silence. 17 worlds? Unit Prime 7749 finally spoke. Our surveys indicated no signs of advanced civilization in any of the nearby systems. Stealth technology? Suggested Lumara. Impossible, Zethvar replied. Our sensors would detect any technology sophisticated enough for true stealth. Unless... He paused, a terrible thought occurring to him. Unless they are using technology we do not recognize as technology, finished Unit Prime 7749, processing the same logical chain. Zethvar activated the communication system. This is Commander Zethvar of the Galactic Confederation vessel Harmony's Edge. We accept your invitation to meet. Please provide coordinates for the most suitable location. The response came back almost immediately, as if Chen had been waiting by the communication device. Excellent. We have prepared a facility in what you would call the Sol 3 Northern Hemisphere. We can provide precise coordinates, or if you prefer, we can guide your ship to a landing site. We have constructed the facility using materials that should be comfortable for most known species types. Most known species types? Lumara flickered wildly. We based our designs on archaeological evidence from various civilizations we have encountered in our explorations. We hope we got it right. Oh, and one more thing. We took the liberty of preparing gifts. We understand this is traditional in first contact scenarios. Zethvar found himself asking, what kind of gifts? Well, we thought you might be interested in some of our older archaeological finds. We have artifacts from several civilizations that seem to predate anything in our current historical records. Most of it is just fragments and partial records, but we thought it might interest your historians. The transmission ended again, leaving the Confederation team in even deeper confusion. Commander, Unit Prime 7749 said slowly, I am beginning to suspect that our initial assessment of this species was incorrect. Zethvar could only agree. Nothing about this encounter was following the standard patterns. These humans spoke as if they were experienced in galactic politics, claimed to have colonies on multiple worlds, and possessed archaeological knowledge that seemed to extend far beyond what any developing species should have access to. Set course for their coordinates, he ordered, and send a priority message to Confederation headquarters. Tell them we may need xenoarchaeologists and historians, not just first contact specialists. As the ship began its approach to Earth, all 3 officers wondered what they were really going to find on the surface of this supposedly primitive world. The meeting facility was unlike anything the Confederation team had expected. Built into the side of a mountain in what the humans called Switzerland, it appeared to be a perfect blend of multiple architectural styles. Crystalline growth patterns that would make the Vethkai comfortable, energy-conductive materials suited for the Luminari, and modular construction that appealed to the Nexus Collective's sensibilities. "How did they know our design preferences?" Zethvar asked as they walked through corridors that seemed to adjust their lighting and temperature automatically. "More concerning," replied Unit Prime 7749, "is how they acquired the materials. Some of these crystals are only found in the Andromeda spiral arm. The energy-conductive metals come from stellar cores. These should be impossible for them to obtain." Dr. Sarah Martinez, their human guide, overheard the comment. She was a small woman with kind eyes and prematurely gray hair, wearing the same simple blue uniform as Secretary General Chen. "Oh, you noticed the building materials? We hoped you would appreciate the effort. Most of those came from our archaeological sites." "Archaeological sites?" Lumara's form brightened with interest. "Yes, we have been excavating ruins on several worlds for the past 60 years. Ever since we developed reliable space travel, we have been finding the most fascinating remnants of ancient civilizations. Would you like to see some of our findings?" Before anyone could answer, Dr. Martinez led them into a vast underground chamber. The space was filled with carefully cataloged artifacts, each one precisely labeled and displayed in climate-controlled cases. But what struck the Confederation team was not the organization. It was the age of everything they were seeing. "This section contains artifacts from what we call the First Period," Dr. Martinez explained, gesturing to a collection of devices that looked impossibly advanced. Carbon dating and quantum resonance analysis put most of these items at approximately 2 million years old. Unit Prime 7749 approached one of the display cases. Inside was a device that looked remarkably similar to modern Nexus Collective technology, but the design was somehow more elegant, more refined. "Where did you find this?" "That particular item came from Mars, actually. We have been excavating there since the 1980s, though we only recently developed the technology to properly analyze what we were finding." Dr. Martinez pulled out a tablet and showed them images of dig sites across the Red Planet. The ruins go down for kilometers. Entire cities perfectly preserved in the dry climate. Zethvar felt his crystal structure vibrating with disbelief. "You have been conducting archaeological excavations on multiple worlds for decades?" "Oh yes. Mars was just the beginning. Once we developed better propulsion systems, we started exploring other systems. You would be amazed at what we found. Every world that could support life seems to have remnants of advanced civilization, all from roughly the same time period." Led them to another section of the chamber. "This is from a world about 12 light-years from here. The local star went nova about 1.8 million years ago, which actually helped preserve everything, flash-frozen in time." The artifacts in this section made Lumara's energy form flicker rapidly. "These designs, they are similar to our most advanced technologies, but the construction methods are completely different, more efficient." "Yes, we noticed that pattern as well. Whoever built these things had reached a level of technological sophistication that makes our current galactic civilizations look primitive by comparison." Dr. Martinez spoke matter-of-factly, as if she was discussing the weather. "Current galactic civilizations?" Zethvar could not keep the surprise out of his voice. "Well, yes, the Confederation, the various member species, all the independent worlds. From our archaeological evidence, it appears that the previous galactic civilization was far more advanced than anything that exists today." Unit Prime 7749 processed this information. "You are suggesting that there was a previous galactic civilization that predates all known history?" "Not suggesting, proving. We have found evidence on 47 different worlds so far, all showing the same technological signatures, all from the same time period, all apparently abandoned around the same time." Dr. Martinez led them to a massive display showing a three-dimensional map of local space. The coverage area seems to encompass most of this spiral arm. The map showed dots representing archaeological sites scattered across hundreds of light-years. Each dot was connected by lines showing probable trade routes and communication networks. The scope was staggering. "But why did they disappear?" Lumara asked. "That is the mystery we have been trying to solve. There are no signs of war, no evidence of natural disaster on a galactic scale, No indication of outside invasion. They just stopped. All at once, across hundreds of worlds, advanced civilization simply ceased. Dr. Martinez pulled up another display showing timeline comparisons. What makes it more interesting is that this disappearance coincides almost exactly with the first evidence of modern galactic species beginning their technological development. Zethvar studied the timeline. According to human data, the ancient civilization had vanished, just as the earliest Vethikai settlements were being established. The Luminari had achieved sentience barely 1,000 years after the disappearance. Even the Nexus Collective's first artificial intelligence had been created in the immediate aftermath of this galactic silence. You are suggesting that the disappearance of this ancient civilization somehow enabled the rise of current civilizations? It is just a theory, but yes. Almost as if the galaxy was deliberately cleared of advanced competition to give younger species room to develop. The implications of this statement hung in the air like a physical weight. Unit Prime 7749 was the first to speak. Such an action would require unprecedented coordination across multiple species and hundreds of worlds, or a single species with enough reach and influence to make the decision unilaterally, Dr. Martinez replied quietly. She led them to the final section of the chamber. Here the artifacts were different, less advanced-looking, more familiar somehow. But the dating labels made all three Confederation officers freeze. These items are from the second period, Dr. Martinez explained. Much more recent, only about 50,000 years old. But here is the interesting part. Genetic analysis of organic materials from this period shows DNA markers consistent with early human development. Zethvar approached one of the cases. Inside was what appeared to be a primitive tool, clearly made by early humans, but it was on a world 15 light-years from Earth. How is this possible? We are still working on that question. Either early humans achieved space travel much earlier than our historical records indicate, or, she paused, seeming to choose her words carefully, or, prompted Lumara, or humans were not originally from Earth. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Unit Prime 7749 spoke. You are suggesting that humans are descendants of the ancient galactic civilization? I am not suggesting anything. I am presenting data and letting others draw conclusions. But I will say this. The genetic diversity patterns in modern humans are consistent with a species that was once widespread across multiple worlds and then became concentrated on a single planet. Dr. Martinez led them back toward the entrance. There is one more thing you should see. We found this on Earth in a cave system that was sealed by geological activity approximately 40,000 years ago. She showed them images on her tablet. Cave paintings, clearly made by early humans. But the paintings showed scenes that should have been impossible for primitive cave dwellers to know about. Star charts accurate to within fractions of degrees. Detailed anatomical drawings of species that looked remarkably similar to the Vethikai, Luminari, and other modern galactic civilizations. These paintings were created by humans who supposedly had never left their home planet, Dr. Martinez said. Yet they somehow knew what other species in the galaxy looked like. As they walked back through the corridors of the impossible facility, Zethvar found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about galactic history. The humans were not the primitive species they had appeared to be. They were something far more complex and far more mysterious. Dr. Martinez, he said finally, why are you showing us all of this? She smiled, the expression both sad and hopeful. Because we have been alone with these discoveries for too long. Because the galaxy has forgotten something important, and we think it is time to remember. And because, despite all our archaeological evidence, we still do not understand what happened to create the galaxy we live in today. The Confederation team left Earth that day with more questions than answers, and a growing suspicion that First Contact was not the beginning of humanity's entrance into galactic civilization. It was their return. 6 months after First Contact, the joint archaeological expedition to Kepler 438b was yielding results that shook the foundations of galactic knowledge. The planet had been selected because it showed the strongest concentration of ancient ruins, and human surveys had indicated something special about the site. Professor Elena Vasquez worked alongside Zethvar in the main excavation pit, both of them covered in the fine dust of a world that had been dead for 2 million years. Around them, teams of humans and aliens carefully brushed away millennia of accumulated debris from structures that defied explanation. The construction technique is unlike anything in our databases, Zethvar said, running his crystalline fingers along a wall that seemed to shift and flow like liquid while remaining perfectly solid. The material appears to be responsive to thought patterns. Elena nodded, her attention focused on a section of what appeared to be text carved into the living stone. We have been finding similar responsive materials on 17 different worlds now, all showing the same construction signatures, all from the same time period. Unit Prime 7749 approached from another section of the dig site, its mechanical form somehow managing to look excited. Discovery, the quantum resonance patterns. In the building materials contain embedded data. The structures themselves appear to be massive storage devices. What kind of data? Elena asked. Historical records, technical specifications, cultural documentation. The amount of information contained in this single building exceeds the total. Historical archives of the Nexus Collective. Dr. Lumara materialized beside them, her energy form flickering with anticipation. We have accessed some of the basic historical files. The species that built these structures called themselves the Shapers. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Shapers. According to the records, they were the dominant species in this region of the galaxy for over 3 million years. They achieved technological capabilities that make our most advanced civilizations look primitive. Matter manipulation, consciousness, transfer, stellar engineering, even limited time manipulation. Zethvar stopped his examination of the wall. Time manipulation? Unit Prime 7749 projected a holographic display showing fragments of recovered data. The records are incomplete, but they indicate the Shapers could accelerate or slow the development of entire species. They could guide evolution, influence, technological advancement, even alter the fundamental laws of physics in localized areas. Why would they want to do that? Elena asked, though part of her already suspected the answer. Because they were gardeners, Lumara replied. According to these records, the Shapers saw themselves as cultivators of life and intelligence throughout the galaxy. They would seed promising worlds, guide the development of interesting species, and create optimal conditions for civilizations to flourish. Elena pulled out her tablet and cross-referenced the information with human archaeological data. The timeline matched perfectly with their own discoveries, but there were additional details that made her hands shake slightly. There is more, she said quietly. We found similar records on Earth last month sealed in a chamber beneath the Antarctic ice sheet. The Shapers, they did not just guide other species, they created them. The alien team members turned their attention fully to her. Even Unit Prime 7749's optical sensors focused with mechanical precision. Created them how? Zethvar asked. Elena displayed images from the Antarctic find on her tablet. Genetic engineering on a scale that defies comprehension. The Shapers took primitive species and guided their evolution across millions of years. They created the biological foundations for what would eventually become the Vethkai, the Luminari, the Nexus Collective precursors, and dozens of other species. That is impossible, Lumara flickered rapidly. Our evolution is well documented. We evolved naturally from energy-based organisms in stellar cores. According to the Shaper records, that evolution was guided. They created the conditions necessary for energy-based life to achieve consciousness and technological capability. What you thought was natural development was actually a carefully orchestrated process spanning millennia. Unit Prime 7749 processed this information. Clarification. Are you suggesting that all current galactic civilizations are artificial constructs created by this ancient species? Not artificial, enhanced. The basic species were real, but the Shapers guided their development, removed evolutionary barriers, and provided the foundation for advanced civilization. Zethvar felt his crystal structure vibrating with denial. But why? What was the purpose? Elena looked up from her tablet, meeting his crystalline gaze directly. According to the records we found on Earth, The Shapers were lonely. The simplicity of the statement hung in the air like a physical weight. Lonely. Lumara's form dimmed. They had achieved technological transcendence millions of years before any other species reached intelligence. They had mastered every challenge, solved every problem, explored every possibility. The universe was vast and empty, and they were completely alone in it. Elena pulled up more files on her tablet. So they decided to create company. They spent 3 million years seeding the galaxy with intelligence, carefully guiding the development of species that could eventually become their equals. They wanted a galaxy full of diverse, interesting civilizations that they could interact with as peers. But something went wrong, Unit Prime 7749 observed. Not wrong. They succeeded too well. The species they created began developing beyond their original parameters. Independent thoughts, original ideas, unpredictable innovations. The Shapers realized they had created something wonderful and unique, but their presence was limiting that growth. Elena showed them the final set of records from the Antarctic chamber. The last entries speak of a great decision. The Shapers chose to withdraw from galactic civilization to allow their created species the chance to develop independently. They called it the Great Forgetting. Withdrawal to where? Zethvar asked. That is where the records become interesting. According to the Shaper archives, they did not leave the galaxy. They chose to regress voluntarily. They abandoned their advanced technology, sealed their records, and scattered themselves across primitive worlds to live simple lives. Unit Prime 7749's optical sensors focused more tightly. They became primitive species themselves? The records suggest they retained the potential for their original capabilities, but chose to forget how to use them. They became farmers, hunters, simple tribal peoples. They chose ignorance over the burden of cosmic responsibility. Elena paused, looking around at the vast ruins surrounding them. The final entry in the Antarctic records identifies the world they selected as their primary regression site. They called it Terra, the Garden World, the place where they would forget everything and start over as natural beings. The implication hung in the air unspoken. Finally, Lumara gave voice to what they were all thinking. Terra. Earth. Elena nodded. The Shapers chose Earth as the place to become human. Zethvar's crystal structure chimed in harmonics of disbelief. You are suggesting that humans are the Shapers? That humanity is the ancient galactic civilization that created all other current species? I am suggesting that the genetic evidence, archaeological records, and historical timeline all support that conclusion. Humans carry genetic markers of extreme age, possess intuitive knowledge of galactic geography they should not have access to, and show rapid adaptation to technologies they have never encountered before. Unit Prime 7749 projected additional data. Correlation. Human learning rates for advanced technology exceed all known species. Human intuition for stellar navigation approaches perfection without training. Human genetic diversity suggests original population distribution across multiple star systems. Elena stood up, brushing dust off her clothes as she looked around the ancient ruins. The Shapers created you, guided your development, and then chose to forget everything so you could grow into your own unique civilizations. They became human and went to sleep for 2 million years. But they are waking up, Lumara observed quietly. Elena nodded. Contact with galactic civilization is triggering genetic memories. Humans are starting to remember things they should not know, understand technologies they have never seen, and demonstrate capabilities that should be impossible. She looked directly at each of her alien colleagues. The galaxy never expected it because the galaxy forgot. But humanity is not a new species entering galactic civilization. We are the original gardeners returning home. The excavation continued in stunned silence, each new discovery adding weight to the impossible truth. The galaxy's children had grown up beautifully in their absence, but now the parents were beginning to remember who they used to be, and they were not sure what that meant for anyone. Dr. James Chen was having the dream again. He stood in a vast chamber filled with swirling galaxies, his hands moving through holographic displays that responded to thoughts he did not remember having. In the dream, he understood the delicate, balance of stellar formation, could feel the pulse of civilizations across thousands of worlds, and knew with perfect clarity how to guide the evolution of entire species. He woke in his small apartment in New Geneva, his heart pounding and his mind filled with knowledge that should not exist. James was not alone. Across Earth and human colonies, millions of people were experiencing similar dreams. Shared visions of ancient technologies, impossible memories of worlds they had never seen, and a growing understanding of scientific principles that had not yet been discovered. Dr. Sarah Kim, head of the Global Dreams Research Project, met with him that morning in a facility that had not existed a month earlier. The building had been constructed in 17 days using techniques that human engineers claimed to have just figured out, but could not explain where the knowledge came from. The pattern is accelerating, Sarah said, showing James brain scans from thousands of volunteers. REM sleep activity has increased by 300% in the past 6 months. But more concerning, people are retaining information from their dreams with perfect accuracy. James looked at the scans, understanding the neural patterns in ways that his medical training had not prepared him for. It is genetic memory activation. Dormant neural pathways that have been sleeping for millions of years are starting to function again. How do you know that? Sarah asked. James paused, realizing he had no idea where that knowledge had come from. I dreamed it last night, along with the molecular structure of trans-dimensional materials and the mathematical principles behind consciousness transfer. Sarah nodded grimly. That is what I was afraid of. James, we estimate that over 200 million humans are now accessing knowledge that should not exist. And they are using it. She led him to an observation deck overlooking a construction site where humans were building something that looked like it belonged in an ancient shaper facility. Workers moved with impossible coordination, using tools they had designed themselves based on principles they could not articulate. They are building a quantum resonance amplifier, James said without thinking, then caught himself. I think that is what they are building. The dream showed me something similar. Exactly. And similar construction projects are starting on every human world. People wake up with plans for technologies that did not exist the day before, and somehow they all work perfectly. A new voice joined the conversation. Commander Zethvar materialized in the observation room, his crystalline form reflecting the morning light. The Confederation Council is meeting an emergency session. What is happening to humanity is causing concern throughout the galaxy. Concern or fear? Sarah asked. Both, Zethvar replied honestly. In the past month, human colonies have demonstrated technological capabilities that rival the most advanced Confederation worlds. Your people are developing faster than should be possible. James watched the construction site below, where humans were installing crystalline components that looked remarkably similar to Vethkai technology, but somehow more elegant. We are not developing it. We are remembering it. That is what frightens the Council. If humans truly are the descendants of the Shapers, then your species once possessed capabilities that could reshape the galaxy. The question is, what do you intend to do with those capabilities as you remember them? Sarah pulled up reports from human colonies throughout local space. The evidence suggests humans are not interested in conquest or domination. Every advanced technology being developed has civilian applications. Better agriculture, improved medical treatments, more efficient energy production. And weapons? Zethvar asked quietly. James felt knowledge stirring in his mind, terrible and beautiful at the same time. We remember those too, but we also remember why we chose to forget them. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Unit Prime 7749. The Nexus Collective representative appeared as a hologram in the room, its mechanical form somehow managing to convey excitement. Priority update. Human colonies in the Centauri system have achieved breakthrough in consciousness transfer technology. They have successfully uploaded and downloaded human consciousness without data loss or personality degradation. Zethvar's crystal structure chimed in alarm. That technology has been theoretical for the Nexus Collective for over 2,000 years. More concerning, Unit Prime 7749 continued, The humans claim they developed it based on shared dreams experienced simultaneously by researchers on 3 different worlds. Sarah checked her reports. That matches what we are seeing here. The dream experiences are not random or individual. Humans are accessing a shared knowledge base stored in our genetic memory. When one person remembers something, others begin remembering related information. It is like a library awakening, James said. Each person who remembers something makes it easier for others to access related knowledge. The process is accelerating exponentially. Zethvar moved to the window, looking out at the construction site. How long before you remember everything? Based on current progression rates? Sarah consulted her tablet. Complete genetic memory activation should occur within the next 2 years. Maybe less. And what happens then? James felt the answer forming in his mind before he spoke it. We become who we used to be, the shapers, the gardeners of the galaxy. The implications hung in the air like a storm cloud. Lumara materialized in the room, her energy form flickering rapidly with agitation. The luminary conclave has detected massive energy signatures from human space. Stellar-scale engineering projects are beginning simultaneously across dozens of systems. What kind of projects? Zethvar asked. Dyson sphere construction, stellar repositioning, gravitational manipulation on a system-wide scale. Technologies that should require centuries of development are being implemented by humans who claim they just remembered how to do it. Sarah pulled up satellite images showing the beginnings of massive construction projects around human colonies. Ring-like structures were taking shape around several stars, built with materials that had not existed in human science a month earlier. The dreams are becoming more vivid and more technical, she reported. Last night, over 50 million humans shared the same dream about stellar engineering. This morning, construction began on projects that directly implement what they saw. James felt the weight of ancestral memory pressing against his consciousness. We are trying to be gentle about it, to wake up slowly and carefully, but the knowledge wants to be used. It is hard to remember how to build stars and then continue living in primitive conditions. Primitive? Zethvar's tone held a warning note. Not primitive in a bad way, James clarified quickly. But when you remember how to manipulate matter at the quantum level, it becomes difficult to accept transportation systems that require physical ships and hours of travel time. Unit Prime 7749 projected new data. Observation: human adaptation to recovered technologies shows no learning curve. Knowledge integration appears instantaneous once accessed. This suggests the original shaper capabilities remain intact in human genetic structure. Lumara's form brightened. The galactic community is beginning to divide into factions. Some species want to suppress human development, fearing a return to shaper dominance. Others believe humanity represents an opportunity for unprecedented galactic advancement. Sarah looked around at her alien colleagues. What do you think we should do? Zethvar considered the question carefully. The Confederation was built on the principle that all species should have the right to develop according to their own nature. If humanity's nature is to be the shapers, then perhaps we should accept that reality. But with safeguards, Lumara added. The original shapers chose to withdraw because they recognized that their presence limited other species' development. If humanity recovers those capabilities, we need assurance that the pattern will not repeat. James felt something deep in his genetic memory, a warm recognition of an old truth. The shapers did not withdraw because they were harmful to other species. They withdrew because they loved them too much to risk limiting their potential. He looked out at the construction site where humans were building wonders based on dreams of ancient knowledge. We will not make the same choice they did. We learned something during our time as humans that the original shapers never had the chance to learn. What is that? Zethvar asked. How to be both powerful and humble. How to guide without controlling. How to be gardeners who celebrate when the plants grow beyond what we originally planned for them. The awakening continued, accelerating with each passing day, as humanity slowly remembered what it meant to be the eldest species in a galaxy full of their beloved children. The Galactic Assembly had never hosted a gathering like this one. Representatives from every known civilization filled the vast amphitheater on Confederation Prime. while humanity's delegation sat in a section that had been hastily constructed, using materials that seemed to shift and flow like living crystal. President Maria Santos of the United Earth Federation stood at the central podium, her simple gray suit a stark contrast to the elaborate ceremonial garments worn by other species. Behind her, holographic displays showed the scope of what humanity had accomplished in the 18 months since their memories had fully awakened. Stars relocated to optimize planetary climates, Dyson spheres that harvested stellar energy without disrupting natural processes, gravitational engineering that had eliminated asteroid threats to inhabited worlds throughout human space, technologies that the galaxy's greatest civilizations had only dreamed of, implemented with careful precision and obvious restraint. We gather today not to negotiate surrender or dominance, President Santos began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. We gather to discuss partnership, responsibility, and the future of galactic civilization. In the Vethkai section, Zethvar felt his crystal structure resonating with harmonics of uncertainty. The being standing at the podium looked human, spoke like a human, but the technology surrounding her delegation represented capabilities that exceeded anything in galactic history. 18 months ago, we believed we were making first contact with a developing species, President Santos continued. Instead, we rediscovered something that had been lost for 2 million years, the memory of who we used to be and why we chose to forget. She gestured to the displays behind her, showing images of ancient Shaper ruins alongside modern human constructions. The similarity was unmistakable, but the newer human technologies showed subtle improvements, refinements that suggested learning and growth rather than mere repetition. We were the Shapers. We spent 3 million years cultivating intelligence throughout this galaxy. We guided your species' development, provided the conditions for your civilizations to flourish, and then we made the most difficult decision any species has ever faced. The amphitheater fell silent except for the subtle hum of translation systems. We chose to forget everything, not because we feared you or wanted to abandon you, but because we loved what you had become too much to risk limiting your potential with our presence. Council Leader Vexthar of the Andromedan Unity stood to address the assembly. His species had been the most vocal opponents of humanity's awakening, fearing a return to the days when one species controlled galactic development. Beautiful words, President Santos, but actions speak more clearly than intentions. Your species has demonstrated capabilities that make every other civilization irrelevant. How do we know you will not repeat the patterns of the past? President Santos smiled, the expression containing both sadness and hope. Because we learned something during our time as humans that we never understood as Shapers. We learned how to fail. She gestured to another display showing human history, wars, disasters, mistakes, and the slow, painful process of learning from those errors. The original Shapers were too advanced, too powerful, too perfect. We never experienced real failure, never had to struggle with moral complexity, never had to learn humility through genuine loss. Our power made us isolated even from those we sought to help. Unit Prime 7749 transmitted a question from the Nexus Collective section. Clarification. You consider your regression to primitive status to be educational rather than tragic? Essential, President Santos replied. For 2 million years we lived as mortal beings. We experienced birth and death, love and loss, success and failure. We learned what it means to be vulnerable, to depend on others, to make mistakes, and grow from them. She paused, looking around the amphitheater at the representatives of dozens of species. We learned what it means to be part of a community rather than guardians of one. Dr. Lumara flickered in the luminary section, her energy form bright with curiosity. What do you propose for the future? Partnership, real partnership, between equals who bring different strengths to the relationship. President Santos activated new displays showing proposed joint projects. We offer our technological capabilities, but only as part of collaborative efforts where every species contributes their unique perspectives and abilities. The displays showed plans that took advantage of each species' natural strengths. HFY, crystalline growth techniques combined with human stellar engineering for perfect space habitats. Luminary energy manipulation paired with human consciousness transfer for exploration of energy-based life forms. Nexus collective computational. Power merged with human intuition for solving previously impossible mathematical problems. We do not want to return to the old relationship of gardeners and gardens, President Santos explained. We want to build something new, a galactic civilization where our recovered abilities serve the common good rather than establishing hierarchy. Supreme. Coordinator Kellenth of the Rigel Confederation raised a question that had been troubling many species. How can there be equality when your capabilities so vastly exceed our own? President Santos nodded, acknowledging the heart of the matter. Because capability is not the same as wisdom. We may remember how to move stars, but you have developed social structures, artistic traditions, and ways of thinking that we never achieved even at our height. She activated displays showing examples of post-Shaper developments throughout the galaxy, mathematical concepts discovered by the Nexus Collective that even recovered Shaper knowledge had not encompassed, artistic forms created by the luminary that transcended anything in ancient records, social harmony techniques developed by dozens of species that created more stable civilizations than the Shapers had ever managed. You did not just grow in our absence. You grew beyond us. You developed capabilities and insights that we never possessed. Our power is ancient knowledge. Your power is innovation, creativity, and wisdom gained through independent growth. The displays showed proposed governance structures that incorporated this principle. Human technological capabilities would be managed through multi-species councils. Major projects would require consensus from multiple civilizations. Safeguards would ensure that no single species, even one with Shaper capabilities, could dominate galactic development. President Santos looked directly at the section where the most resistant species were seated. We understand your fears. We share them. The original Shapers withdrew because they recognized the danger of their overwhelming influence. We propose something different. Integration with accountability. She activated final displays showing the proposed galactic partnership, Accords, a framework for cooperation that acknowledged humanity's unique capabilities while establishing clear limitations on their use. Technologies would be shared freely. Major decisions would be made collectively. And most importantly, humanity would submit to external oversight to ensure they never again became isolated in their power. We offer our abilities in service to the galaxy we helped create, President Santos concluded. Not as returned rulers, but as contributing members of a community that has grown far beyond what we ever imagined possible. The debate that followed lasted for days. Species argued, negotiated, and gradually worked toward consensus. Some remained suspicious, others embraced the possibilities, but all recognized that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. When the vote finally came, it was not unanimous, but it was decisive. The Galactic Partnership Accords were approved, establishing a new framework for interspecies cooperation that acknowledged both humanity's recovered capabilities and the independent achievements of galactic civilization. President Santos signed the accords using a pen made from materials that had been forged in stellar cores, surrounded by representatives of species whose development she was only now remembering having guided millions of years earlier. The galaxy never expected it, she said quietly to Zethvar as the ceremony concluded, because the galaxy forgot that parents can learn from their children. Zethvar's crystal structure chimed in harmonics of cautious optimism, and children can teach their parents new ways to be a family. Looking out at the assembled representatives, President Santos felt something that the original Shapers had never experienced, the joy of being part of something larger than themselves. They were no longer the lonely gardeners of an empty galaxy. They were members of a vast, diverse, and wonderfully unpredictable community that they had helped create but could never have imagined. The galaxy's eldest children had come home, not to rule, but to belong. And for the first time in 3 million years, the universe did not seem empty anymore. Humanity had returned to take their place not above the galactic community, but within it. The primeval ones had become something new, partners in the grandest collaboration the galaxy had ever known.